She called the cops and screamed, "Arrest him!" But I was standing in front of my own moving truck on my own land. Neighbors stopped and stared as Karen, the self-appointed HOA queen, pointed her finger at me like she was a judge. "He can't leave without authorization. This house belongs to the HOA now," she shouted. My stomach twisted, not from fear but from disbelief. Who in their right mind thinks someone needs her permission to move out of their own home? The officer glanced at me, confused, and I kept calm. I wasn't just moving boxes. I was moving my entire life away from her toxic grip. What Karen didn't know was that my son, who was quietly standing behind me, wasn't just helping me load furniture. He was an FBI agent, and this little show she was putting on was about to backfire in ways she couldn't even imagine. Karen strutted closer, her heels clacking on the pavement like she owned the whole street. She leaned toward the officer, lowering her voice but making sure everyone could hear. "He's abandoning this property without paying thousands in HOA fees. This is criminal. You need to seize the house." The officer frowned, flipping through a thin folder Karen shoved into his hands. I caught a glimpse. Half the papers looked like they were printed off the internet. Fake stamps, crooked signatures, all meant to look official. My son gave me the slightest nod, the kind only I would notice. He had already recognized the signs of forged documents. Karen kept going, louder this time, her eyes darting between the crowd and the cop. "He's lying to you. He doesn't even own this house anymore. We revoked his right to live here." Some neighbors gasped, others whispered, unsure if she was telling the truth. I stood silent, letting her dig her own grave. The officer cleared his throat and asked me for my side. Before I could answer, Karen grabbed his arm and hissed, "Don't listen to him, he'll try to trick you." That was her mistake. My son finally stepped forward, calm but sharp. "Officer, I think you'll want to verify the origin of those documents. They're not just fake, they're part of a bigger fraud." Karen's face froze for a split second, then she snapped back, her voice cracking. "And who are you supposed to be? His moving boy?" I smiled, because I knew the moment she asked that question, the ground under her was already shifting. Karen laughed, trying to keep her voice steady, but the crack gave her away. "This is HOA business, young man. You don't get a say here." My son didn't flinch. He reached into his jacket and calmly pulled out a leather badge holder, flipping it open just long enough for the officer to see. The cop's eyebrows shot up. Karen's smirk wavered. "I'm not here as his moving boy," my son said, his tone even but sharp. "I'm a federal agent, and what you just handed over isn't just fake paperwork, it's attempted property fraud." The crowd murmured, phones came out, neighbors started recording. Karen froze like someone had yanked the power cord out of her body. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback ready. The officer straightened, suddenly cautious. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to hold on to these documents," he said, sliding the folder away from her. Karen lunged forward to grab it back, but my son stepped between them with a quiet authority that made the air heavy. "You might want to think twice before interfering with federal evidence." Her face turned red, veins standing out on her neck. "This is harassment. He can't just leave? The HOA owns him," she shrieked. The word sounded insane even to her supporters, who slowly backed away. I didn't say much, I didn't need to. The tide had already turned, but deep inside I knew this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't the kind of person who gave up easily. She had one more card to play, and when she did, the whole neighborhood would see just how far she was willing to go. Karen's desperation boiled over like a kettle left too long on the stove. She yanked her phone out and dialed with shaking fingers, her voice high-pitched but full of fake authority. "Yes, send the patrol car now. He's resisting HOA enforcement," she barked into the speaker. The neighbors gasped, half amused, half terrified, as she pretended the HOA had its own police force. My son folded his arms, watching calmly. "She's calling backup that doesn't exist," he whispered to me. But seconds later, 2 cars screeched into the cul-de-sac. My heart skipped. Had she actually convinced the local police to side with her? The doors swung open and 2 men in dark uniforms stepped out, but something was off. No badges, no name tags, just cheap patches that looked like they'd been ironed on yesterday. Karen pointed straight at me. "Arrest him now. He's stealing HOA property." The men moved quickly, grabbing for my arm. The officer on scene shouted, "Hold it! Who are you?" But they ignored him, trying to twist my wrist behind my back. That's when my son's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Federal agents, step away immediately." His tone was so sharp the air itself seemed to freeze. He flashed his badge, this time wide open so the whole street could see. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The fake cops hesitated, their grip loosening. Karen shrieked louder, stomping her foot. "Don't listen to him. He's bluffing." But the officer had already drawn his radio, calling for real backup. And I just stood there, half angry, half in awe, realizing Karen had crossed a line that would seal her fate. The two fake cops exchanged a glance, the kind of silent panic you can't hide when you know the game is over. One of them muttered, "This wasn't part of the deal." But Karen shoved him forward like a desperate gambler throwing in her last chip. "Do your job," she screamed. The real officer barked, "Hands where I can see them." His hand hovered near his holster. My son stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the fakes could hear. "Impersonating law enforcement carries a federal sentence. Walk away now or you'll leave here in cuffs." Phones were everywhere now. Neighbors were filming every second, narrating under their breath. "She hired fake cops. Oh my God, she's finished." The imposters hesitated, then slowly raised their hands. One dropped his plastic badge to the ground. It clattered like a toy. Karen's eyes went wild. "No, don't you dare quit on me," she shouted, her voice cracking. She lunged at one of them, trying to shove the badge back into his hands, but the officer stepped between them. "That's enough, ma'am. You're under investigation now." For a moment, silence hung over the whole street. Even the birds seemed to stop. Karen's mouth opened and closed, searching for another excuse, another lie, but nothing came. She had been exposed in front of the entire neighborhood. I leaned against the moving truck, my pulse finally settling, and thought to myself, this is far from over. Karen won't go down without dragging someone else with her, and the look in her eyes told me exactly that. She wasn't done yet. Karen's breathing turned ragged, but instead of backing down, she suddenly spun toward the crowd. Her voice dropped low, almost trembling, but laced with venom. "Do you all see this? He's abandoning the community. He's leaving you behind with unpaid dues. Your property values will collapse because of him." She jabbed her finger at me like I was some kind of criminal on trial. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, but most weren't buying it anymore. Still, Karen wasn't aiming for their approval. She was reaching for chaos. With one quick motion, she grabbed a folder from her bag and flung its contents into the air. Papers scattered across the street. Fake liens, phony violation notices, even letters with forged signatures. It was like watching her dirty secrets explode into daylight. My son bent to pick one up, holding it carefully. "These aren't just fake. They're tied to bank accounts, shell companies, money laundering." He glanced at me, his expression sharp. "Dad, she's been running this scam for years." The officer's radio crackled. Backup was on the way. Karen saw her empire crumbling and made her final gamble. She darted toward the moving truck, yanking open the door, screaming, "If he leaves, none of us have control anymore." The neighbors gasped as she climbed inside, fumbling with the ignition like she planned to block us from ever leaving. That's when my son's hand shot forward. Not with violence, but with authority. His voice thundered, "Karen, step out of the vehicle right now." And for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked genuinely afraid. Karen froze in the driver's seat, her hands trembling on the wheel. Her eyes darted between my son's badge, the officer's stern face, and the dozens of phones aimed at her. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but instead of surrendering gracefully, she went for one last desperate scream. "He's kidnapping me. He's holding me hostage." The crowd erupted in disbelief. "Are you serious?" Someone shouted. Another neighbor laughed out loud. "Lady, we've got the whole thing on video." Cameras zoomed in closer, every second of her meltdown broadcast to social media before she even realized it. The officer yanked the door open and pulled her out, cuffing her wrists behind her back. Karen kicked and flailed, yelling, "You'll all regret this." "I am the HOA." The officer read her rights calmly while she thrashed on the pavement. My son stood tall, silent, letting the truth unfold without another word. One of the fake cops tried to slip away through the crowd, but the real backup had already arrived. Squad cars boxed them in, and both imposters were pinned down and cuffed before they could take 3 steps. The neighbors cheered, not because they hated her personally, but because years of her bullying had finally met its wall. I leaned against the moving truck, the cool metal steadying me. For the first time in years, I felt free. The power Karen had over us was gone, shattered in front of everyone. My son glanced at me with a faint smile and whispered, "Told you it would all come crashing down." But deep in my chest, I knew the biggest twist wasn't the arrest itself. It was what those fake documents revealed. Karen's scam was part of something much bigger. And now federal eyes were on it. Say next, and I'll close it with Section 8, the emotional and patriotic ending. Karen sat cuffed on the curb, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. The crowd's whispers grew into a wave. Neighbors who had once feared her were now speaking freely. She threatened to take my car last year. She fined me for planting flowers. She said she could evict my kids. Every ugly truth spilled out in the open, and for the first time, Karen had no power to silence them. The officer loaded her into the back of the cruiser, but before the door shut, she glared at me. "This isn't over. The HOA will destroy you." My son leaned down, his voice low and final.
The HOA isn't above the law.
"And neither are you." The door slammed, cutting off her words for good. As the cars rolled away, a strange calm settled over the street. Some neighbors clapped. Others just stood quietly, taking in the fact that the tyrant of their block was gone. I looked at my son, pride swelling in my chest. "I thought I was just moving out," I said. "Didn't expect to take down a fraud ring in the process." He gave a small grin. "That's the thing about people like her. They think they're untouchable, until someone stands up." I turned back to my truck, the last box still sitting on the ramp. My hands rested on it as I looked at the house one final time. "I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't leave my own home," I said aloud. Not just to my son, but to the crowd, to myself, to the world. And in that moment, it wasn't just about me moving out. It was about freedom, about finally being free from her grip. As the sun dipped low behind the rooftops, I climbed into the truck, engine rumbling steady. My son climbed in beside me. The street had changed forever, and so had I.